The first week in my new house, an HOA president stomped my kid's model airplane into splinters on my front porch, then lied to the cops so convincingly I ended up in handcuffs right in front of my children. I remember the cold metal clicking shut, my son screaming my name, and this woman smiling like she'd just won something. And if my security camera hadn't been rolling in 4K, I don't know how far she would have taken it. I moved out to Pine Hollow because I needed quiet, real quiet, not suburban quiet, with leaf blowers and nosy boards policing your mailbox height. I'd just bought a place on 20 acres, a long gravel drive, trees thick enough to swallow the world, and a porch that finally felt like home. It was supposed to be a reset for me and my kids. Ethan is 10, Lily is 7, and they've had more fresh starts than any kid should ever have. I promised them this one was the last. The first morning I'm standing out there with coffee, watching the mist burn off the pasture, thinking, okay, maybe I can breathe again. That's when a shiny black SUV crawls up my driveway like it's got permission. It stops way too close to my porch, not a neighborly distance and I own you distance. A woman steps out in perfect white slacks and sunglasses that cost more than my first car. She's holding a thick folder like it's a weapon. "Hi," she says, flashing a bright plastic smile. "I'm Diane Caldwell, president of Maple Ridge Homeowners Association, HOA. I actually laughed because I thought she was lost. "Ma'am, I told her this property isn't in an HOA. Her smile doesn't move, only her jaw tightens like I just mispronounced her name. "Oh, it is now," she says, tapping the folder. "Recent boundary update. Your parcel has been annexed." I blinked at her. Annexed. Like a country. Diane tilts her head, patient, condescending, like she's explaining the alphabet to a dog. "You'll receive a compliance packet. There are rules, there are fees, and failure to comply carries fines up to $500 per day." $500 per day. Over what? My grass being too happy. I tried to keep my voice calm because my kids were inside and I wasn't about to turn their new home into a circus on day one. "I bought this land through the county," I said. "I have the deed. There is no HOA. You're on private property. Please leave." Diane looks past me into the house like she's inventorying what she's going to take later. "We can do this the easy way," she says, "or we can do it the costly way." I took a slow breath. 10 seconds, I said. "Then I'm calling the sheriff for trespassing." Her nostrils flared. She spun on her heel and walked back to her SUV like the gravel owed her an apology. And for about 3 hours, I let myself believe that was the end of it. Around lunchtime, Ethan dragged his little project out to the porch. He'd been working on this wooden model airplane for weeks, gluing tiny pieces with the kind of focus only a kid has when the world still feels fixable. I watched him from the doorway, smiling without even realizing it. Then I heard heels on gravel again. Diane. This time she didn't stop at the bottom of the steps. She climbed them like she belonged there, still holding that folder, still wearing that same smile, only now it looked sharper. "What is this mess?" she snapped, waving at Ethan's supplies. "This is not an approved porch appearance." Ethan froze, hands hovering over the plane like he didn't know whether to protect it or hide it. I stepped out, trying to put my body between her and my kid. "Diane," I said, "you need to go. Now." She ignored me. Her eyes locked on the airplane, and I watched the thought form behind those sunglasses like she'd found the easiest way to hurt me. She lifted her foot. "Don't," I said, one word low and flat. She did it anyway. Her heel came down right on the wing, a loud crack, then another wood-splintering glue, popping little pieces skittering across the boards. Ethan didn't even cry at first. He just stared like his brain couldn't process what his eyes had seen. Something in me snapped so hard I felt it in my teeth. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I said, voice shaking. "That's a child's project." Diane gasped, clutching her chest like I'd just assaulted her with words. "Do not speak to me that way. You are already in violation." Ethan finally made this small broken sound like air leaking out of him, and I swear that hurt worse than the plane. For a second I thought, maybe she wants me to explode. Maybe that's the whole point. I looked down at my son, at his hands trembling, and I forced myself to lower my voice. "Get off my porch," I said, "right now." Diane leaned in just a little and her smile came back. Or what Jake you'll call the sheriff again. I didn't touch her. I didn't even raise a hand. I just stepped forward, holding my palms out like leave. That's it. And then she screamed. Full volume, movie level. "He's attacking me. Help. He's attacking me." My head whipped around, confused because no one else was even there. Then a man barreled onto the porch behind her tall broad, wearing a tactical-looking belt like he was auditioning for a cop show. Trent Caldwell, her husband. He snapped out a baton like it was a magic trick, the metal extending with a sharp pop that made Lily gasp from inside the doorway. "Back up," Trent barked, pointing it at my chest. "You put your hands on my wife again, and I'll drop you." "I didn't touch her," I said, and my voice sounded too calm for what was happening, like my brain was trying to protect me by slowing everything down. "Get that thing away from my kids." Diane kept crying, turning her face just enough to make it visible to the driveway, like she knew an audience was coming. And sure enough, sirens. 2 patrol cars rolled up fast dust, kicking up behind them, like they'd been waiting at the end of the road. Diane ran down the steps sobbing. Trent followed, holding his baton like he'd saved civilization. The deputies took one look at Diane's performance and one look at me. Standing on my porch, jaw clenched my son behind me and decided the story before I opened my mouth. "She said you assaulted her," one deputy told me. "That's not true," I said. "She trespassed. She destroyed my son's property. Her husband threatened me with a weapon on my porch." Trent suddenly staggered like he'd been punched, then went down to one knee, grabbing his side, groaning. A performance to match Diane's like they'd rehearsed it. Diane pointed at me, mascara-perfect voice trembling. "He's violent. He's been threatening us since yesterday. He's unstable." Unstable! I felt that word sink into my ribs. Because for a split second, just a split second, I wondered if maybe I was. Maybe moving out here was a mistake. Maybe I'd dragged my kids into another nightmare and called it fresh air. The deputy reached for my arm. "I have children watching," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Please just listen." He didn't. The cuffs came out cold and final, and when they locked around my wrists, Ethan started crying so hard he couldn't breathe. Dad, don't go," he screamed. I looked at Diane, and she met my eyes, and there it was, this tiny, satisfied smile, like she'd just proven something. For a moment, right there on my own porch, I felt completely powerless. Like the world had rules I'd never been taught, and Diane knew every single one. Then I remembered something. My phone was in my pocket, still connected to my home system, and above my front door, mounted under the eave, was a 4K security camera I'd installed the day we moved in. I took a breath so slow it hurt. "Deputy," I said carefully, "I have footage. Everything that happened on this porch is on camera, including her stomping my son's airplane, including her husband threatening me with a baton. All of it." The deputy paused. "Just a fraction." Diane's smile vanished so fast it was almost funny. "That camera is private," she snapped. "He can't." The deputy held up a hand. "Ma'am, stop talking." Right then I felt something shift. Not relief yet. More like a rope tightening around her instead of me. That night, after they finally uncuffed me and took statements and walked away with their heads full of questions, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the broken airplane pieces. Ethan had gone quiet. Not calm quiet, like he'd folded in on himself. I thought about packing up, about selling the place at a loss, about admitting I'd failed again. And then Lily came in half asleep, climbed into my lap and whispered, "Are we safe here, Daddy?" My throat closed. That was the moment I decided Diane Caldwell wasn't taking one more thing from my kids. Not their home, not their peace, not their sense of safety. The next morning, I called an attorney named Ryan Cole, recommended by a guy at the hardware store who said, "He doesn't smile much, but he wins." Ryan watched the footage in silence. Diane's heel coming down, Trent's baton snapping open, Diane screaming like an actress. The cuffs, Ethan crying. When it ended, Ryan didn't even look up right away. He just said, "They picked the wrong house." He pulled county maps, property records, everything. And that's when the real reason surfaced why Diane was so desperate to shove my land into her precious HOA. There was a golf course expansion planned nearby, the kind of expansion that needed land. My land. My acres lined up perfectly with their future development. Ryan leaned back and said, "They can't just take it. So they're trying to crush you until you sign something, or they slap liens and fines until you can't fight back." A few days later, a man in a maintenance uniform showed up at dusk Miguel. He didn't step onto my porch, just stood at the bottom like he was afraid the house itself might report him. He tossed a USB drive into the grass and said, "They're not good people. And what she did to your boy." That was it for me. Then he walked away. On that drive were recordings and meeting notes, board members laughing about fines until he breaks, talking about annexing like it was a party trick, bragging about how most people fold once the legal threats start. Ryan's eyes went cold. "Oh," he said softly, "now we've got them." The showdown wasn't loud at first. It was paperwork, subpoenas, depositions. Diane tried to posture, tried to intimidate, tried to spin herself as the victim of an aggressive newcomer. But video doesn't care about spin. The day we walked into court, Diane wore a blazer like she was there to give a TED Talk. Trent sat behind her, jaw clenched, acting like he could still scare me with a look. I didn't look away. The footage played on the big screen. My porch, my son's hands, Diane's heel, the wood cracking. Trent's baton, Diane screaming, my wrists in cuffs. The courtroom went very, very quiet. Diane's face turned this strange color like her body couldn't decide between anger and panic. When the judge asked her if she still claimed I attacked her, she hesitated. That hesitation was the sound of her empire collapsing. The judge didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He talked about trespassing, about harassment, about fraudulent representations of authority, about abuse of power, about how a homeowners association does not get to invent boundaries and terrorize families to serve private development deals. Then he ordered consequences, real ones. Emergency orders, financial penalties, a restraining order. The board removed and replaced under oversight pending investigation. And when deputies stepped toward Diane, she stood up so fast her chair scraped. "You can't do this," she snapped, voice cracking. "I'm the president of the HOA." The deputy didn't even blink. "Not anymore, ma'am." They escorted her out while she kept talking, words spilling out like she could bully reality into changing its mind. Trent reached for her arm, then stopped like he finally understood that his baton didn't work in a courtroom. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. I just stood there breathing, feeling my shoulders unlock for the first time in weeks. Because the moment Diane Caldwell lost her power was the moment my kids got their home back. Lesson learned. When a bully hides behind rules, the truth captured and documented hits harder than any threat ever could.